May, June 2023, paper 1, variant 1. Question 1. Which unit is a unit of weight? Definitely a kilonewton. The graph represents a motion of a vehicle. What's the distance traveled in 400 seconds? Distance equals area under the graph. Area under the graph. And the area is a triangle, half times base times height, which is half times 400 times 20, so 4,000 meters. The diagram shows a distance time graph. What is the average speed between x and y? We know that the average speed equals total distance over total time. Over total time. Between what? Between x and y. So the total distance between x and y was 12 minus 6, which is 6 meters. And the total time was 30 minus 10, which is 20 seconds. So basically 6 over 20. 6 over 20 is 0.3 meters per second. A space rocket travels to the moon. How do the mass and weight of the space rocket on the moon compare with their values on Earth? Again, the acceleration of the free fall is greater on Earth. The mass, would the mass differ? No, the mass would be the same. Would the weight differ? Yes, it would be less, okay, than on Earth. The weight on the moon would be less than on Earth. A shoekeeper pours some rice, okay? Which quantity must be the same for the rice and the pasta? When he poured some pasta, okay, when he poured some pasta, it had the same reading, okay? Customer buys some pasta, the shoekeeper notices that the reading on the balance, okay, is the same, okay? It is the same. So basically, which quantity must be the same? It has to be the weight. Why? Because this is the force pulling the spring balance down. A student determines the density of an irregularly shaped stone. Which other apparatus? The measuring cylinder will measure the volume. To find the density, you need mass over volume, okay? To find the density, you need mass over volume. To calculate the mass or to measure the mass, you need a balance. Four objects are moving. Which object has a zero resultant force? Zero resultant force. It has to be moving with a constant speed in a straight line. In a straight line. If it's moving in a circle, this would cause something called a centripetal force or centripetal acceleration. You're not really required to know this. You are not really required to know this centripetal force or centripetal acceleration. But you need to know that an object that is moving at a constant speed in a straight line, would have a zero resultant force acting on it. A meter ruler with two forces acting on this meter ruler with a pivot, this would definitely be moment. It's in equilibrium, so the resultant forces are zero and the resultant moments are also zero. What's the upward force? What is the upward force? Again, moment equals force times distance. So the clockwise moment equals the anti-clockwise moment. The moment exerted by this force is equal to the moment exerted by this force. Force times perpendicular distance. Force times perpendicular distance to the pivot is equal to the other force times the perpendicular distance to the pivot. Okay, so as for the force on the spring, we do not know the force, but the distance is equal to the distance between the string, I'm sorry, and the pivot is 20. The distance is 20 because 50 minus 30, 50 minus 30 is 20. The other force is 4 newtons, and the distance is 50 minus 5, which is 45. Can we calculate the force? Yes, this would be easy. Again, F times 20 equals 180. You can divide. Okay, so the force would be 9 newtons. An irregularly shaped metal plate is freely suspended from point P. and it's in equilibrium, so it's not moving, no resultant forces, nothing is happening. Point Q is vertically below point P. Which statement about the position of center of gravity is correct? We know for a fact that the center of gravity should be where? Should be below, should be directly below the point of suspension. So it's not at P and it's not at Q. It should be directly below the point of suspension, somewhere between P and Q. Is it halfway between P and Q? We're not sure. So we cannot choose C. Further investigation is needed. You need to suspend it from another point, for example, from this point again, and find the point of intersection. It could be halfway, it could not be halfway. We have no idea. Which row about the change of energy, okay, must be correct. The process when we pump the water at high altitude, the energy stored should be gravitation potential energy, and the change of energy increases. Well, yes, when you pump some water to a high altitude dam, okay, you're pumping this water upwards. You're increasing the gravitation potential energy. You're increasing the gravitational potential energy. So this is correct. A rock of weight 50 newtons falls a vertical distance of 7 meters from rest. What is the change in gravitational potential energy? You are not required to know the equation for the gravitational potential energy, but you're required to know the other equation, which is work done. Work done equals what? Equals force times distance. The force is 50 newtons and the distance is 7 meters. So the work done is 350 joules. Is it an increase or a decrease of 350 joules? Okay. As it falls down, as it falls down vertically, what happens to the gravitation potential energy? The gravitation potential energy, it decreases. Okay. It decreases as it falls down. Okay. Child runs up a set of stairs 4 times. Which time measured would give the greatest power? The greatest power needs the least time. Power equals energy over time. As you decrease the time, the power increases, and basically the energy or the work done is constant because he's the same child. He has the same weight and he's running the same distance. A woman has a weight of 600 newtons. She stands on a horizontal floor. The area of her feet in contact with the floor is 0.050 meters squared. What is the pressure she exerts on the floor? How can I calculate the pressure? Pressure equals force over area. Pressure equals force, okay, force over area. Force is 600 newtons over 0.05 meters. If you calculate this on your calculator, this would be 12,000. 12,000, or in other terms, it would be 1.2 times 10 to the power of 4. Gases, liquids, and solids are made up of small particles. Which row gives the relative separations of the particles? Definitely, the particles are far apart in the gas. In liquids, they are a bit closer, okay? And in solids, they are much closer. So the only right answer would be C. Which statements about the evaporation of water are correct? Evaporation causes the remaining liquid to cool. Yes, evaporation, the more energetic particles escape from the surface. Yes, evaporation only happens at 100 degrees Celsius. Wrong, this is boiling. Okay, so only 1 and 2. Which surface is the worst absorber of infrared radiation? We know that the worst absorber has to be white and it must be shiny. So shiny white. Which wave has the largest amplitude and the highest frequency? Largest amplitude is the maximum distance from the mean position and the highest frequency. So basically A, this is an easy answer. A really easy question. A student draws a diagram to show the directions of light reflecting off a plane mirror. Which are the correct terms for the lines? 2 is the normal, okay? 1 is the incident, and 3 is the reflected. An object O is placed at point P. Okay, object O is now placed at point P, and the image appears on the other side. When the object O is moved to point Q, when the object O is now moved to point Q. Now the object will be at this position. What will happen to the image? Whenever you move an object closer to the lens, what happens to the image? The image gets larger. Okay, it will remain inverted as long as it's before, okay, or as long as the distance is greater than the focal length. As long as the distance is greater than the focal length, the image will be inverted. Okay, the image will be inverted as long as the distance is greater than the focal length. But whenever the object comes closer to the focal point or comes closer to the principal focus, the image gets larger. So it will be inverted, not the same size, no, it will be enlarged. Okay, because it became okay, because it came closer to the lens. Which diagram shows the dispersion of white light? Okay, we know that dispersion of white light. A would definitely be wrong. B, okay, seems about right. C is wrong. And D is wrong. Why? C, the violet cannot refract upwards. The violet cannot refract upwards. D, the violet cannot move in a straight line. The only correct answer would be B because they would bend downwards a little. Which statement is correct? A remote controller emits microwave, remote controller emits infrared. Yes, we know that remote controllers emit infrared radiations. A student X fires a starting pistol which produces smoke and sound. Student Y, standing at a distance of 100 meters away, sees the smoke at the instant it is produced. The speed of sound is 340 meters per second. What's the time delay? This is very simple because you will only use speed equals distance over time. To calculate the time equals distance over speed. So basically 100 over 340. 100 over 340 would be, um, yes, 0.29 seconds. An unmagnetized piece of soft iron is now close to a permanent magnet. What's the induced polarity? And what is the direction of the force on the soft iron? Okay. The induced polarity on this side would be south, and the direction of force, it is now pulled to the left. Okay, it's south and it is pulled to the left. Why is it pulled to the left? Because it's attracted. Plastic rod is rubbed with a cloth. The rod becomes negatively charged. The rod becomes negatively charged, meaning that the electrons will move from the cloth to the rod. The electrons would move from the cloth to the rod, and the cloth would become positively charged. So basically, C and D are wrong. A, this means that the electrons are moving from the rod to the cloth, which would make the cloth negatively charged. So A is wrong. Which particles move to cause a current? The only particles that move are electrons. Okay, electrons. 4 students draw a circuit and they want to measure the resistance of resistor R alone. A is wrong because the ammeter cannot be in parallel. B is wrong because he does not want to measure the resistance of the resistor and the variable resistor. C is definitely wrong because the ammeter is not in parallel, and D is the only correct answer. The voltmeter is in parallel with the resistor and the ammeter is in series. The battery on a bicycle is connected in parallel to the lamp. Switches S1 and S2. The cyclist closes switch S1 to light the lamp, S2 to sound the bell. What happens to the current in the battery and what happens to the power output? As you close both switches, what happens to the current? The current increases because both of them would require current. What happens to the power? The power would definitely also increase because power equals VI. As the current increases, what happens to the power? The power increases. Power equals VI. So both of them will increase. What symbol represents the electric heater? An electric heater is D. Soon connects the circuit shown. Which switches must be closed for the bell to ring without lighting the lamp? You need the bell alone, so you need to close the circuit this way. So we need to close switch S1 and switch 3 only. 1 and 3 only. A double insulated electrical appliance must be connected safely to the electrical supply. Double insulated means what? It means that it has a plastic casing. Double insulated means that it has a plastic casing. Plastic casing means that you are not required to connect an earth wire. You are not required to connect an earth wire. So you need only a fuse. You are not required to connect an earth wire. Okay? A simple electrical generator induces an electromotive force EMF. Which modification would increase the induced EMF? How can I increase the induced EMF? Basically, all I need to do is increase the number of turns. Any other answer would be wrong. Increasing the distance between the magnetic poles, this would decrease the magnetic field, reduce the strength of the magnetic field, again wrong. Reversing the direction of the magnetic field, this will do nothing. It will only reverse the direction of the output EMF. The diagram shows a vertical wire carrying current. What is the direction of the force on the wire? To be very clear, the question is not asking you to actually state the direction of the motion. You're not actually required to say if it's moving to the left or to the right. Okay? You're not required to say that it's moving from the left to the right. You know for a fact that it will not move from north to south or from south to north. Why? Because this is the direction of the magnetic field. So A and B are wrong. A and B are wrong. It will not, the force is not parallel to the wire. The force is actually perpendicular. What do I mean that the force is perpendicular? Why did I choose C? This means that the force will either move to the left or to the right. This means that the force on the wire, this wire will now move either to the left or to the right. Are you required to actually know the direction of motion? No, you are not required to know if it will move to the left or to the right. You are only required to know hmm, that it will move perpendicularly to the magnetic field. And that's it. Okay, that is it. What is an advantage of transmitting electricity at high voltages? Faster, safer? No. Less energy is wasted. Okay, less energy is wasted. And that's it. How are positive and negative ions formed from atoms? Positive ions. You cannot add positive charges. Remove electrons. Yes, remove electrons. Negative ions. Add an electron. Remove positive charges. You cannot remove positive charges. A nucleus, which is an isotope of element X, it has to have the same proton number. B. Which statement about the random decay of nuclei in a sample of uranium is correct? The probabilities of alpha, beta, and gamma are equal. No, they're not equal. The probability of a nucleus in the sample decaying decreases as time passes. The probability of a nucleus in the sample decaying decreases as no, it's not, it does not decrease. Okay, the probability is random. The probability of a nucleus decaying in any 10-minute interval is the same for all the nuclei in the sample. Yes, any nucleus could decay at any given time. It is a random decay. What is the half-life of the isotope? How can I find the half-life of the isotope? Initially, it was 480. Divided by 2 is 240. 240 was after 60 minutes. That's it. Which planet is nearest to the sun? And what is the nature of this planet? Definitely, the planet nearest to the sun would be Mercury. And the nature of this planet is rocky. The sun consists mostly of two elements. We know that the two elements are hydrogen and helium. Which statement about the Milky Way is correct? Definitely a Milky Way, or the Milky Way is a galaxy. Okay.